Welcome to the Nerdy Multiverse. She-Hulk is back with the 7th episode of the series, and this episode did progress the story a bit and had some callbacks to the comics that have to be talked about. So let's talk about those Easter eggs and mainly give our thoughts on the episode and the series going forward, the episode being titled The Retreat. Before we get started, we wanted to give a quick little shout to our merch site where we have brand new shirts, sweatshirts, and more. The design heavily inspired by She-Hulk and the series. If you wish to support us, feel free to go check that out. The link is in the description below. We also wanted to give a quick spoiler warning for those that haven't seen the episode, as we will be touching on it in the previous episodes as well, so you have been warned. This video will be a bit shorter probably, but either way, let's begin with this episode. So the title of the episode being The Retreat in itself represents what Jennifer does in this episode and what is going on, as she ends up going to Emil Blonsky's sort of retreat where he is staying, while also retreating from her personal issues in her life, whether it's as Jennifer Walters or as She-Hulk. A big part of this episode was about Jennifer and the guy she met at the wedding from the last episode, Josh. We see Josh and Jennifer going on dates and growing closer, but this turns out to be bad for Jennifer, as after one night they spend together, he ends up completely ghosting her, which is one of the things that she gets the opportunity to vent about with Blonsky at his retreat with the others. Jennifer is requested to come with to Emil Blonsky's retreat as backup because his inhibitor malfunctioned. We see her stay a while longer here after her car gets practically destroyed by two of Emil's friends, who are also part of the support group there that we see later. These two characters being Man-Bull and Agula, both of which being characters that came straight from the comics. Although they aren't popular or known characters whatsoever, it is still cool to see callbacks to the comics. Man-Bull being a supervillain from the comics who mostly had conflict with Daredevil. He turned into the Man-Bull after an experiment with a serum that was taken from bulls and made out of mutated enzymes. Agula being a self-proclaimed swashbuckler mutant superhero from the comics, bringing more light, even if it's small, to the mutant side of Marvel, much like Mr. Immortal did from the last episode. His powers in the comics are basically identical to his powers shown in this series. When She-Hulk gets to the support group, she ends up joining them in conversation after running into Wrecker there, who also happens to be part of the group now. Wrecker obviously being a part of the Wrecking Crew and one of the guys that attacked She-Hulk outside of her home to try and get her blood in the previous episodes. Man-Bull and Agula also being at the support group, but two other characters from the comics being here as well. These two also being very minor characters from comics, but again, still callbacks. The two characters being Porcupine and Saracen. Porcupine in the comics was originally a designer of weapons, and he worked with the US Army, but he eventually turned to crime after being declined payment for his creation, and his name obviously coming from his battle suit that he created. Now, Saracen has been changed up a bit in the series. Originally in the comics, he was a regular mortal human who has occasionally been an antagonist for the Punisher, being a mercenary and assassin himself. Those two often faced off. Now in the series, Saracen is introduced as a vampire, and this is most likely to not only introduce more vampires into the cinematic universe, but also eventually lead to the Blade movie. So after all of the support group talk and Jennifer deleting Josh's number after being ghosted and then heading back home, we jump back in time to 3 days later to the night that Josh and Jennifer had that night together before he ghosted her. We see Josh getting up in the middle of the night while she is sleeping, and it looks like he presumably copied everything off of her phone for information, and as he is walking out, he creepily takes a picture of her sleeping and then texts the Hulk King contact on his phone. So this means that Josh this entire time was most likely sent in to spy on Jennifer, get close enough to her so that he can gather all of this information and figure out the times that she is most vulnerable, so that he could give this information to Intelligentsia and whoever is behind it, so that they could get her blood if he didn't already get it himself. And this being where the episode ends. All of that being what was relatively important to break down and talk about in this episode. So hopefully, without repeating myself too much from what I have said in the past few episodes about the series, I want to quickly also give my thoughts on the series as a whole and the future of it. So this episode again was enjoyable, and it definitely did pick up the story more than the previous episodes have, and I do really enjoy seeing seeing how Jennifer deals with her struggles and the sort of emotional weight that goes with that sort of stuff. And again, the comedy has been good, and it is genuinely funnier than the usual sort of cringy MCU jokes. But now that this is the 7th episode of the series and there are now only 2 episodes left, really confirms to me that this series will definitely end up having a rushed finale, much like other previous shows have had in the past. As in the past few episodes, we have only been slowly building up to this plot and possible villain coming into the series, and now the 7th episode being over, and this series seemingly only now in the past 2 episodes sort of starting to bring in the conflict that will bring us into the conclusion of the story and the series. Definitely feels like there will be a mysterious villain revealed either next episode in the finale that has already been predicted, and the characters dealing with that conflict in a very rushed sort of feeling or manner, which just absolutely sucks that this happened, as the amount of episodes were even expanded with this series, but yet it still feels like there will be a feeling of being rushed. Now, not every single story needs a villain present in it, but there needs to be a plot for there actually to be a story, and the plot in this series hasn't really been there this whole time, and now only recently is being brought into the series, and only in sort of like little hints here and there, and now we're reaching the end and it's gonna be rushed. I would never want to be seen as hating on this show or the character, because I have always loved She-Hulk as a character, so this is more of just trying to find a way to critique the way that they treated her character in live action. I feel that the MCU recently has had a feeling of sort of being lackluster or having rushed projects, and this is most likely because of the amount of projects that are being released nowadays, and now hearing the bad news about the Blade movie and it losing its director, and Mahershala Ali being frustrated with the process and the script being lackluster, has me very, very worried that we are moving to a time where it is quantity rather than quality. Of course, I will still cover everything and will still continue to build up hype for each upcoming project, and of course I will watch every project and enjoy them to the fullest. And I can say that I am actually very, very excited for Wakanda Forever and Werewolf by Night. But for the others, I am just concerned for all of these different stories and these beloved characters. I don't want them to be brought down or waves of hate going towards these actors or the characters that these people are portraying on the screen just because of the way that they are handled in live action. So it is unfortunate that a lot of this stuff has felt that way of being rushed, but let's hope that they can turn all of this around. And lastly, I will say this episode of She-Hulk was definitely one of the better ones, and it was personally my favorite out of the ones that we have gotten in the past few weeks. That's really all that I could think of to talk about when it comes to the episode, the series as a whole, and the future of the series, without constantly repeating myself, of course. So before we get out of here, we do still want to hear your thoughts on the episode, of course, so make sure to let us know in the comments. Before we get out of here, I do want to quickly mention that if you are into the comics, DC, and Batman, and all of his Robins and family and whatnot, make sure to stay tuned as we have a huge video coming out, hopefully sometime next week, talking about the entirety of the Bat family and all of their origins in the comics. But with all of that being said, thank you all for watching. If you want to see more nerdy content like this, make sure to subscribe to the channel with notifications turned on, and don't forget to hit the like button on this video. We will see you all the next time that we go through and explore the nerdy multiverse.